Greetings and welcome to Pinball Help. Mike here. Work continues on this Stern World Poker Tour game, and I wanted to show you my progress on it and also give you the whole long story about exactly what it took for me to get this thing working. So we had a problem with these drop targets here not resetting. They would pop up and pop back down, and it kept doing it, and the drop targets just would not stay up. So let me show you. It's fixed now. And so now the drop targets work fine. They're all. Of course, I'm not even going to hit them now. So there's still some stuff that I need to do on this machine. It's been pulled off of location, and I think there's some optos that are getting a little weird on it. But I fixed the drop target problem, so that's good. And I'm going to show you what exactly happened here.
Kind of time this makes up hair.
So let's take a look at the underside of the machine, because that's where the stuff's going on. All right. Let's pull this all off. All right. So this game has probably been on location for a long, long time. I'm just getting a good look at it. And let's get these balls out. All right. So there's our drop target assembly. Let's take a look at it. This right here is the underside of that bank of 8 drop targets. Now, what was happening is the drop targets would not stay up. Turns out that there's a Stern service bulletin about this right here, Stern service bulletin number 165, that says one thing you can do is you can add some spacers behind this plastic piece that the things are supposed to catch on, stick it out a 1/16 of an inch, and that will help. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So when I took this assembly off, I discovered there was a couple of other issues with it, and that actually wasn't the reason they were sticking. And of course, after the fact, I found this. This is the original plunger for one part of the assembly. There's 2 coils. Let's take a look at them on the other side. So let me put this thing over here, and we'll zoom in. And you can see there's 2 coils here, and when these things pull up, they lock the targets into place. And if I drop all the targets down, you can see when this thing pulls up, they stay up. They stay up. They're not back down. Same thing with this one. Oops, see, one of the ones did not. Try it again. There we go. Now, when I looked at all these drop target assemblies, there was a couple things I noticed. Right off the bat, I noticed that one of them was different than all the others. See, this one has a nut on the end. You see, this one has a nut on the end right here, holding the bracket, whereas all the others have a bolt on the end. See, there's a bolt there. It's not actually, so it's a completely different assembly. So the plunger that works with these things is one that has an actual threaded end that comes out. Now this is broken off. So what happened was, this was the original plunger that was right in here, and I think it was inside was threaded, and then this was a bolt that went through to hold the bracket on. They replaced it with one that had a nut, had threaded coming out, so you put a nut on the other end instead of putting a bolt into it. So it was the wrong part. They put the wrong part on here. But I didn't really know if that was the problem. So let me go over what happened. So I start to take the assembly off, and how you remove this is you remove all, there's 4, 8, 10 screws here, wood screws, 2 there, 2 there, and 2 there. And You undo these wood screws, and then this whole thing comes out. Oops. You have to move these lights here out of the way because they're kind of between the bracket. And I replaced them with LEDs, so there's a string of lights. You bend the lights back, you take the screws off, then you pull the whole assembly out, and then there's two connectors on the back side that you undo, and then the whole thing can completely come out except you've got the two coils wired in here. So the way you get the two coils off is you have two nuts here, and you have two nuts on the back for the coil stop. And there's this bracket here, and this bracket has threaded bolts integrated into it. It's like they're stamped in or they're spot welded in. So there's no actual bolt and nut. There's just basically this bracket with threaded rods holding the coils on, and there's two in the front and there's two in the back. So what I discovered once I took this thing off was one of the bolts in the back snapped off. So the coil stop was only being held on by one bolt, and it was slightly sideways, and that was what was causing this thing to not go up properly. So I'm not going to do any editing, but I took pictures of this whole assembly. So if you watch this on my actual website, PinballHelp.com, you'll see pictures of the assembly as I disassembled it and put it all together. And so once I pulled the thing out, I said, okay, we got a bigger problem here, which is one of the coil stops can't be bolted on because the bolt is sheared off from the bracket. This bracket cannot be obtained anywhere. I haven't found it. It's not a part that seems to be commonly available. And there's not a whole lot of clearance on the back side for you to run a traditional bolt or nut through because you've got the target sliding up on the back side. So I was kind of confused as to what exactly I was going to do. So what I ended up doing, and we can see over here on this forebank here what I'm talking about. See, the drop targets are right up against the back of the thing. So I ended up, after consulting with a bunch of people and getting some advice, I decided probably the best course of action was to try to drill that broken bolt out. I drilled it out, and I found a number 6, a 632 by 3/4 inch bolt that had a rounded head on it. So I took that, and it almost was enough clearance, but there's a little plastic piece up here that the thing catches onto, and it was in the way of that. That's one of the reasons why these things were integrated in, because the nylon piece that the drop targets catch on basically was in the way of the bolts of the coil stop. So I ground down the head, one side of the head of the bolt, so that it would fit in there. And then I managed to run a regular bolt through and bolt it on, and it did work. So I was able to replace the bolt back here and get that going. So I put the whole assembly back together thinking, okay, I added the spacers as per the service thing, put it in, and it still wasn't working right. It was still not having all of the things go up. So then I started to notice that this particular plunger, I knew it was different from the others because it had a different end. All the rest of them had bolts. This one had a nut. Turns out this is probably the wrong part for this assembly. This is probably the original part, and this was threaded inside of here, and the bolt broke off, and they found another piece where there was just threading coming out. And another difference is this plunger is about 1/8 of an inch longer than the proper plunger. So what was happening is it wouldn't pull it up quite enough to make the target stick. So one problem turned into 2 problems, turned into 3 problems. Now, what I could do is I could order this part, if it's available, this extra plunger, and replace it. But I realized, well, if it's just that it's just too short, I'm going to pull that out. So I pulled this plunger out, and I ground down the end of it. I ground an 1/8 of an inch off of it, and then polished it and put it back in. And so now, even though it's the wrong part, it's been shortened to the proper length that these things need to be in order to lift this up. So this illustrates kind of the weird path that you go on when you're trying to repair these games. Initially is, okay, drop targets won't go up. Let me do the service bulletin thing and add the extra offset so that they'll catch. That doesn't work. Oh, This is where Occam's razor comes in. When you're looking at these things and you realize this part is different from that part, somebody put in the wrong part. An operator, maybe a field thing, this is the only part that he had. So he put in the wrong part. Now, I don't know what he was thinking, because I'm not convinced that the drop targets, once he put that wrong plunger in, they ever worked completely reliably. Because this thing still would not go up. It needed to go up a little bit, 1/8 of an inch more travel, and it didn't. So once I ground it down, it works fine. So if this does end up breaking in the future, I will obviously replace it with the proper part. But for now, it's working nice. And it resets all the targets nicely. So that's another thing you have to work on when you get these games from sources where they've been operated. You've got these operators that they're doing field repairs. The objective is to get the game back working, because when it's not working, it's not making any money. Sometimes that means rigging the machine, replacing the wrong part, as long as you can get it semi-functioning. Maybe this guy did get it working, and it was working for a while, but from my perspective, it was the wrong part, and it wasn't making the targets reset. So now we've got that part fixed. And interesting how there's actually 3 things wrong with that bracket, and I didn't know until I started disassembling everything. And it's a real pain in the ass pulling everything off, putting it back on. And I just hope these opto boards don't go out. They're very expensive. But I guess I can do component level repair on them if that does happen. So that's kind of the progress on this game. I'm trying to get it all back working. Everything seems to be working now, except I believe that some of the optos in other areas of the game are barfing. Move this back a little bit. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be more information on my actual website, PinballHelp.com. I'll have more detailed pictures of this, and you can find out more about what it actually looked like and the mods that I made to this bolt to fix the assembly and everything. So thanks for watching. For more, visit the website, PinballHelp.com.